So 11 years after doing the GAPS diet, the gut and psychology syndrome diet, I want to share with you my experience, give you a bit of an update of the last 11 years since doing it, and answer the big question of should you do it? Is it dietary approach that is really helpful? So I'm going to give you a bit of a recap, fast forward, 11 years, am I glad I did the GAPS diet? Is it something you should do? Let's dive in.
One.
Very nice.
Two.
Oh, do one more time.
Three. 4. 5. 6. 7.
So how many eggs do we have?
7.
So before we dive into that, a little bit of a quick life update. So 11 years ago, I started on the GAPS diet because my gut health was awful. There was so many dramas and embarrassment around my bowel issues and the chronic diarrhea that went on and that led to bowel incontinence. There was bloating every day. I was sore, I was fatigued. Also, I'd started to get lots of joint pain. My hormones were all over the place. Things were a bit of a mess. So I heard of the GAPS diet through a friend and decided to give it a go. The GAPS diet was originally created by Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, really as a solution for neurodivergence and to support autistic children, especially in alleviating some of their symptoms and helping them, hence it being called the gut and psychology syndrome diet. At the time, that's not why I approached it. I just thought it'd be really good for my gut health. But in hindsight, now realizing I'm one neurodivergent person, it's just funny how time goes and the irony of it all. So now we're 11 years later, I've had 3 kids, I've retrained as a holistic nutritionist and coach, and I've been doing this work for over 10 years. I think at the time of doing GAPS, I was working as a health coach. I then went back to uni, got my postgraduate in nutritional science and practice, and I've been working on my online clinic with clients around gut health issues, hormone issues for over 10 years. So now I'm approaching it with a much stronger clinical perspective as well as a life perspective. So the GAPS diet, first of all, what actually is it? What does it mean? So it is a dietary healing protocol that's quite restrictive. It has different stages. You can read all about it in the GAPS book, which I'll link to below if you are interested. And it's really created by a doctor who found that a lot of people and her patients with autism were also having a lot of gut issues. Since then, this has been reinforced by lots of other research as well in terms of, there's that Harvard gastroenterologist, Dr. Chris Andiamo, I think, that has done a lot further, more detailed research into autism and gastrointestinal issues, and the links there. So diet itself actually requires different stages. So you begin with quite a low amount of food, but there's no grains, there's no dairy, there's no sugar, there's no processed foods, there's no seed oils. And so to begin with, it's quite a restricted approach and way of eating. And it's something a lot of people can do because you can get the book, you can get the cookbook, and you can start applying it to yourself and just start doing it. And that's kind of how I came at it, and how a lot of people now, being a holistic nutritionist and having worked with people, I've worked with lots of people that have kind of done GAPS or similar-ish diets on their own to just desperately try and help alleviate their symptoms. And that's where I was. In all honesty, I just desperately wanted to feel better. I was so sick of just constantly being bloated, people asking me if I was pregnant when I wasn't pregnant. And now that I've actually been pregnant, I did look pregnant. That's not hyperbole. I 100% look pregnant. And having the anxiety and the social impact of having bowel issues and incontinence as an adult, just psychologically really unhelpful and painful, as well as physically. You know, I was also getting bad back, joint pain. I couldn't run. I could no longer climb. I couldn't climb up mountains. And I was in my 20s looking at the trajectory of my life thinking, is it always going to be this limited? So I totally get why things like the GAPS diet and other similar diets like autoimmune protocol, AIP, they're not exactly the same, but there's similarities. Also the specific carbohydrate diet, the SCD diet, a lot of these very kind of therapeutic. You also would have the ketogenic diet, although the ketogenic diet has got a lot more robust research to it. The AIP diet has a little bit of research slowly gathering to it, but GAPS is not an evidence-based, as far as I'm aware, happy to be corrected on that, it's not an evidence-based dietary intervention. But it is something that can use quite a restrictive protocol to kind of help reset the diet. It's not something, reset the body, sorry. It's not something that's designed for you to just eat like that for the rest of your life, although its principles are based on more traditional approaches to preparing and consuming food. So I went on the GAPS diet to mainly help with my gut issues and my bloating and my bowel issues, and then also maybe my hormones, my energy, the joint, just to help with everything. I was kind of hoping it would just fix everything, which we so often do, right? Just hoping it would just sort out everything. And to cut a long story short, is it something I think you should do? Is it something recommended? I would probably say 80% of the time, no. As a holistic nutritionist and coach now, having worked with people in my clinical practice for a long time, I take principles from the GAPS diet, but I have never, as far as I can remember, straight out recommended a client going on the GAPS diet. Here's why. It's very general. And this is some of the strength of it. If you can't afford to work with a practitioner or you're figuring it all out on your own, it is a very detailed structure, but it is very generalized. I find a lot of the people that are drawn to GAPS are people with chronic gut issues, or they're obviously living with neurodivergence and they're really wanting to optimize some of those neurodivergent symptoms, which is totally possible and a topic for another video. But a lot of people arriving at GAPS are already in a state of chronic symptoms, and the GAPS diet isn't going to help you figure out the root cause of your symptoms. It's just another quite restrictive dietary approach. But until you've gotten really clear of what your unique root cause is, the GAP diet potentially is quite a lot of effort, quite a lot of stress, and quite a lot of restriction for minimal takeaway. So that would be the overall summary. Is a lot of the time, and from working with people, I've found people to be attracted to these restrictive healing protocols and start applying them without first really getting clear on what the problem really is. And I did this. So I dived into the GAPS diet, but I never actually looked at why do I have gut issues? Why do I have bowel incontinence? Why am I bloated? Why are my joints sore? Why do I have energy issues? I didn't know the answer to that. I was just hoping GAPS would somehow magically fix it. That is not a logical or strategic approach. That is why I didn't see phenomenal results from doing GAPS, and that's why I wouldn't do it again. When I started to run labs and gather personalized data and figure out what my unique root causes were, that's what moved the needle. And I think the problem with a lot of these, with GAPS, with AIP, with SCD, actually are generic approaches that aren't actually going to help you to deal with your root cause. And therefore you may make some progress, you may make 20%, 30%, bloating might get a little bit less, but if you never are addressing the fundamental problem, the problem is not going to get fixed. And that would be my overall experience and summary. And what I've learned as a clinician and a practitioner about these protocols, I do really harness some of the tools and the takeaways of them, and they can be really useful when they are targeting the right kind of problem. When the GAPS diet is a great solution, when it is the strategic answer to a clarified problem. It's not a great band or plaster fix everything, and it potentially is going to create more disordered eating and stress and anxiety because of its restrictive nature. Now, restriction sometimes is needed within helping people to see and make phenomenal changes, and I've had tens of clients that have made incredible, completely life transforming changes, whether it's with their IBS, with their hormones, with their thyroid health, with their skin. I've seen it all, so I know it is possible, but in order to do that, you really need to target unique root causes rather than just put like this band-aid over a generic problem. So should you do the GAPS diet? I think it really depends on first this one question. Are you clear on what your root causes are? Are you clear on why you have symptoms? Are you clear of what the gut issues are? Or if you're doing it to really optimize neurodivergence, are you clear on why there's these more difficult to manage or unwanted neurodivergent symptoms? Are you clear on why that is? And if you are clear on it and then GAPS meets that, is a strategic solution to those problems, great, bada bing, bada boom. Problem, solution, lovely. But if you're just hoping that if you just restrict enough food, you'll somehow feel better, you're probably going to end up with a lot of stress and not a lot of progress. So the thing that you want to do is understand your unique root cause. And that's what helped me the most. When I realized I had parasites and yeast and bacterial overgrowth and arsenic toxicity and damaged mitochondria and poor sleep quality and a whole host of genetic SNPs and variations that made certain things much harder. When I understood those 7 things, put a really targeted strategy based on getting rid of yeast overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, parasites, arsenic, that is really what moved the needle. And I would say once I started to address those specific things, I actually made more progress in 3 to 4 months than I did on the full 12 to 18 months on GAPS. Why? Because it was personalized. So before you dive into something that is going to take up so much headspace of meal planning and prepping and changing everything and restriction and blah, 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 first, please make sure that you understand what the root cause is, that you understand what your symptoms mean. That is the first most imperative thing. Gathering data, organizing the data, maybe running private lab tests, gathering the labs from your doctor. That's what I do as a holistic nutritionist, is integrating all the data that they've already got. We'll run private functional labs in order to really understand what the root cause is, because then you'll actually make progress much quicker. The GAPS diet often says up to 18 to 24 months to heal. And sometimes healing the body and gut health does take that long. But I honestly have experienced in my own body and with the clients that I've helped that you can make progress so much quicker when you are really clear on the problems that you are solving. So the GAPS diet, it's not a terrible nutritional thing. It's not like, I'm not hating on it. It was a step I needed to take, and I learned a lot about food and traditional preparation of food and all these kind of things. But the proof is in the pudding, in that I do not use it as a dietary approach in my clinical practice. I get clients to make bone broth and we take principles of it and these kind of things, but it's not something I use strongly. Yet I have remained IBS free with boring bowels, dull hormones, energy. I can run again, I can climb again. I've completely transformed my health without having to follow such a restrictive, life-altering protocol, and you can do the same as well. Food is medicine, but food is also joy and fun and pleasure, and you can make progress and heal your body without living in total restriction, but only when you get really clear on your unique root cause. So there's my summary. Should you go on GAPS? There's your answer. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for joining me.
Do a big throw. Big throw. Wait.
Well, one thing has changed in the last 12 years. I can now keep plants alive, sort of. I can keep this kind of plant alive. This one, I feel like is on its way out.